I don't want to walk down the canal in February wearing basketball shorts and a t-shirt with my arms tucked in my shirt, freezing, waiting for the sun to come up. I love raising my children, laughing with my family, traveling with my family. I love the relationship I have with my wife. I love the fact that I don't think about drinking ever. I don't want it. I don't want alcohol in my life. What I want is a real life now. I want a whole life. Welcome back to the Struggle and Strive podcast. My name is Estil Wallace. Today we are going to be covering step 3, which is made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Let's jump right into it. There are a few big key components that I want to pull out of this and discuss today. The very first thing is the actor's scenario. It's a narrative about a guy who is an actor, but he's trying to operate the entire show. He's trying to be the director, change the lights, etc. And his life doesn't work out. When I originally went through the 12 steps, the guy that took me through encouraged me to take it and alter the reading into first person. So I wasn't talking about some actor, some other guy in some other time and place, so that I was talking about myself. And that was what I did, and he had me read it to 10 different individual people. Through that process, what I realized is that it really hit hard. When I made it about me and not about some other person in some other time and place, it started to really hit home. And that would be one of my suggestions for you if you've never tried this before, maybe you have and you haven't tried it in a while, would be to alter this text so that it reads in the first person. And I think what would be good is if I just read it for you right now. Here's how it goes. The first requirement is that I be convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, I am almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though my motives are good. I try to live by self-propulsion. I'm like an actor who wants to run the whole show. I am forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in my own way. If only my arrangements would stay put, if only people would do as I wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including myself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think that life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. I become on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can rest, which is the root word of wrestle, it means to pry forcibly? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction, happiness out of this world if I only manage well, right? If I just get my shit together? Is it not evident to the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? I am self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. People say egotistical nowadays. I'm like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. Politics at that time was, they just got out of World War I. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever my protestations, am I not mostly concerned with myself, my resentments, my self-pity? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that I think is the root of my troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt me seemingly without provocation, but I invariably find that at some time in the past, I have made decisions based on self that later place me in a position to be hurt. So my troubles, I believe, are of my own making. They arise out of myself, and I am an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Above everything, I must be rid of this selfishness. I must, or it's going to kill me. That's where I like to end the reading. I think it illustrates really well how I get wrapped up in trying to fix things in my life, trying to exert control over things where I really have no control, where I try to, I'm trying to elicit specific outcomes. I have expectations of others, of people, of institutions. And when those expectations aren't met, in some cases I double down and I try harder. I try to be more gracious, as the text says, or, and it never really works. There's this agreement. There's this deal that's struck in step 3, because the step is I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to God. We've got to sort of outline the terms of the deal, so to speak. We have a new employer being all powerful, provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. So let's unpack that. I have a new employer being all powerful, provided what I needed. My sponsor asked me what I needed when I was newly sober, and I jotted down a list of things that I thought I needed. And he interrupted me and was like, no, you need the whole human experience. And this is an opportunity for us to throw another graphic on the screen of Maslow's pyramid of needs theory. So if you're familiar with this, at the very base level, you have physiological needs, right? Food, water, shelter, basic survival. Next above that, I need safety. I need stability, security, freedom. Above that, I need love and belonging, relationships, community, connection, to be someone amongst my peers. Above that is esteem, respect, recognition, a sense of accomplishment. And at the very top of the pyramid is self-actualization, to become all that I could to reach my life's purpose and potential. So when the book suggests that my new employer will meet all of my needs, it's got all of my needs in mind. God has all of my needs in mind. The center of the universe, however you need to define or not define to keep it loose and vague, whatever it is at the center of the universe that made all of this, that we're asking for help. If that's going to be my employer, that's a very specific relationship. Employer-employee. I've got stuff to do, they cut the paycheck, right? In that particular analogy. So the paycheck in this example is everything. And I could give you my experience as anecdote. I can also give you the experience of thousands of people that I've helped over the last 20 years find this way of life. Spiritual fitness is like physical fitness. Results are going to vary, right? Not everybody's going to look like Arnold after you've been in the gym for a year. Just like not everybody's results in recovery are going to look exactly the same. Most people's results are overwhelmingly positive. Some of them are just downright dumbfounding, astounding, like miraculously awesome. My life has been one of those. It's been miraculously awesome. Back to the deal, what you're looking at is, all right, I'm asking God to be my employer, to give me a rich, full life with everything I need all the way up to self-actualization inside of that life. So what is God asking of me? Well, it's a two-parter. The first is that I keep close to him and perform his work well. So let's go with the first part. The first part is keep close to him. What does that mean? It sounds vague. Well, let's unpack it a little bit. Let's think about, if I'm going to keep close to God, that means I'm going to be trusting God. This is where faith comes back into play. And faith, at least for me, when I was new and I was starting to look at these concepts, I didn't really understand the relationship that faith literally bridged the gap between me and God. And here's how I've sort of learned it. If I were to watch a tightrope walker walk between two buildings, I see that and I think, wow, that's incredible. It's impressive. Then the dude breaks out a wheelbarrow. And everybody goes, oh. Belief is me conceptualizing that he can successfully do this. Faith is me getting in the wheelbarrow. And that's the difference between believing in God or believing in a higher power and truly having faith that God can move the big mountains while I take these little footsteps. That if I go 10%, God can drag me the other 90%. That when I put in the effort and I do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, whether anybody's watching or not, that the seemingly insane and insurmountable obstacles in front of my way in front of me are gonna either melt away or be moved, or I'm gonna be able to navigate them somehow very easily. And that has been my experience time and time again through all kinds of circumstances. Learning how to trust, how to have faith, it can start small, and like other things, it can grow, it can snowball. Try it with little things. For example, I would think, my life is falling apart. This is, when I'm newly sober, living in a halfway house, I thought my life is falling apart. I have nothing going for me. I'm on felony probation. I walk and take the bus everywhere. I have no car. I have no driver's license. I make almost no money, $8 an hour. I don't know what that equals to a year, but it was barely enough to survive. In that mode where my relationship with, to God through faith was really just, all right, I'm going to do the next indicated thing in front of me, and I'm praying that you're going to make this tolerable, that you're going to get me from one moment to the next, that I'm going to make it to the pillow sober one more time, because I don't know how to get there. I am willing to do the thing in front of me and to do it with integrity, meaning I'm going to show up at work the same way I show up with my friends, the same way I would show up anywhere. I'm going to have integrity. But that's about all I had. All I had was my ability to show up and move my feet. I didn't have much else. And by having faith that this thing that I wasn't sure existed or I believed in, or if it did, if it believed in me, having faith that this God was going to give me the emotional stability to make it to the meeting tonight without leaving, to go drink, to go get loaded, or that I would make it home from the meeting, that I would pray, God, if you're real, help me. And what I was essentially doing was I was entering into this place where I was trying faith. Because I got to tell you, the first 6 months of sobriety, I was miserable, absolutely miserable, suicidal for many of those months. I would cry myself to sleep. I would hardly sleep. I would toss and turn. I was restless, irritable, discontent. I was, just like the book says, I was very much a tortured person because I hadn't had a drink or a drug in nearly 6 months, and I'm moving my feet and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm waiting for God to show up, right? I'm waiting for some kind of a experience. And what I failed to realize until a little more time went by is that every single day I would make it back to the pillow sober one more time without doing any of the crazy shit that went through my head that day. Because a lot of plenty of crazy things would go through my head on a daily basis, especially when I was new. If one more thing goes wrong, I'm out of here. I'm just gonna go, fill in the blank with self-destructive behavior. And as I looked backward over this stretch of months, every single day I made it back to the pillow sober one more time. Every single day I ate. Every single day I slept inside. Every single day I was building, as flimsy as it seemed at the beginning, I was building the foundation for what was going to be my new life. So let's look at the second contingency as part of this relationship. So I've got to keep close to him and perform his work well. This can sound lofty. Let me assure you, it isn't. If you're working the 12 steps, particularly if your life has been falling apart because of an insidious gambling addiction or food addiction or drugs or fentanyl or alcohol, then if you're in a real place of desperation around this, the role that God has for you is very simple. It's for you to finish the 12 steps, to take other people through the 12 steps, and then there may be other roles that you have that are already pre-assigned, like being a father, like being a husband, to being a mother, to being a wife, to being a spouse. Those are other roles that we have, but that's my job. My job is to be a good member of a 12-step community, to try to work through the rest of the steps, to help other men through the steps, and to show up as the best, most honest, the most driven version of myself, so that I can become the provider. I can become the person, the man that I've always wanted to be, even though I didn't have a clear vision of what that was. I knew I wasn't it. I knew I was lacking a lot of things. That's what God is calling me to. That is my job. That is my role. my experience has been that over time in this way of life, the role gets really rounded out with a lot of different roles, a lot of things that God has added to my plate, so to speak. So I'm not just a guy who has finished the steps and takes other people through the steps. And that is a big part of it. But I'm also a husband. I've been with the same gal for 17 years. We've been married for 14. She is the love of my life. She's amazing, and she deserves to have a good man in her life. And because of this relationship I have with God, she does. I've also got 3 beautiful children. I am the daddy to 3 young children, and those kids need a dad. I didn't grow up with a strong father figure, and they do because of this relationship I have with God. I would go one step further in my own case and say that it is my purpose in life to be a billboard, to be a road sign for other people, for other men specifically. And that's what I'm doing with this podcast. That's what I'm hoping some of you will get from this experience with me, is that my job, part of my role with God is to expose this way of life to you, to be a road sign, because I don't have the answers. It's my job to point you towards the answers, towards the answer. So when we talk about do his work well, perform his work well, this is where if you go to enough 12-step meetings, the people will say things like, well, to the best of my ability, I do this to the best of my ability. That's fine. I'm not here to throw stones at those people, but that's not what the text says, and that's not the way I read it. That's not the way I interpret it. It's not what it says, it's not the way I interpret it. What I read is perform his work well. Well, where would I look to in our current culture, in our history, to people who do things well? Well, that's easy to do. We have benchmarks for people that perform things well. Like people that play basketball well are in the NBA, right? Like this isn't rocket science. Do I do God's work well? Do I do what God's put it on my life and on my heart to do, which is to help men find God, help people find sobriety, recovery, to be a good daddy and to be a good husband? Am I doing those things at the NBA level? I got to tell you, I'm not. I am putting everything I have into it because that's what I want. I want this life. I don't ever want to sleep on rooftops again. I don't ever want to beg for food out in front of Pete's Fish and Chips again. I don't want to walk down the canal in February wearing basketball shorts and a t-shirt with my arms tucked in my shirt, freezing, waiting for the sun to come up. I don't want to do that ever again. I love living indoors. I love feeding my wife and my kids. I love spending time with them. I love playing hide and seek with my kids. I love raising my children, laughing with my family, traveling with my family. I love the relationship I have with my wife. I love the fact that I don't think about drinking ever. I don't want it. I don't want alcohol in my life. What I want is a real life now. I want a whole life like we described, where all my basic needs are met all the way up to my purpose being driven to become all that I possibly could to reach my fullest potential as a man. That's what I want. I want a real life. And God promises me that if I do 2 things, I keep close to him and I perform his work well. All right, that's it for step 3. Make sure you catch our next episode when we're going to cover step 4.